And still, oh look, a squirrel.
123ink.ie. You ain't shit. I wish I was 50 years younger and I'd kick your ass.
Well, fans can be the harshest critics, you know.
And they often are.
A wife is often the harshest critic of her husband.
I thought I was invincible. That's what you're trained to believe as a sports person.
There was 4 million people in Ireland who knew much more about managing football teams than I did. When it comes to music, I can spoof with the best.
Your sporting career is the best time you'll have, and you know you have to hang on to it for as long as you like, because everything else is pretty crappy.
And this is not lies. Stephen Rothschild has never spoken to Jimmy McGuinness in his life.
This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5. You can text us 53106. We're streaming the conversation as well. Listen on News Talk, but also watch us on the Off the Ball digital and social channels for Periscope on Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app. It's Man United 1, Everton 0 in the Premier League. Anthony Martial with the goal, and they've just kicked off in the second half. This is the panel. We're going to review the sporting week between now and 2:35 with the former Irish rugby international Alison Miller, the Irish independent sports writer Michael Verney, and the UEFA Pro licence coach Shane Keegan. Alison, Michael and Shane, great to have you back on.
Hi guys, how are you?
Great to have you back on. We're going to start off, I think we'll throw in with the Gaelic Games to start. And Michael, this is a really important month for the GA Football Championship because the structure is going to be voted upon at Congress. There are a couple of options later this month. A revamped provinces with 8 teams in 4 provinces and teams moving provinces, status quo, counties going into different provinces, or another option which the GPA are believed to support overwhelmingly, a league championship with top 5 in Division 1, Division 2 winners, and then winners of playoffs involving Division 2 and Division 3 and 4 reaching All-Ireland quarterfinals. But that sounds a bit convoluted, but effectively it's meaningful games in the summer at the height of the weather, 7 games per division, a Charlton Cup, a secondary competition as well. If both options fail to get 60% of votes at Congress, we'll be back to choosing between the Super 8s and the qualifiers. It's about the experience for both the players and the supporters. What's the mood music like at the moment, Michael, in terms of your reading of the tea leaves?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, John, and obviously the Congress was supposed to be last month, so I think it's only right and fair that it happens this month when there's more attention given to it, there's more conversation around it, there's more time put into it, and I suppose there's more thought put into it as well. So it's not till the 23rd of October, it's 3 weeks today. So it's already been debated fairly well over the last couple of weeks, and it's going to be debated even more, and I'm sure we'll hear more influential voices coming out over the next 3 weeks. But it's definitely getting the time that it deserves because, the potential changes could be seismic to the championship. You obviously mentioned the 3 options there. I think it's probably a bit, it's not ideal to have 3 different plans that are all going to be voted on, because no more than if it was basically cut to 2 options, there's no percentages lost, shall we say. You need 60% for this to go through at Special Congress. The fact that there's a third option here, be it the status quo, we'll just say we'll go with Plan B, and then there's the status quo, and then there's obviously Plan A. There's the potential for 10 to 15% to be lost on one of those plans that because there's 3 in the mix. If there was 2 in the mix, I think Plan B in particular would probably have a better chance of going through. There's definitely a swell of support for Plan B at the moment, particularly coming from players and obviously from the players' body in the GPA as well. Plan B, you would imagine, definitely serves the needs of players. They will get meaningful games against opposition that are in a very, very similar boat to themselves. It's essentially Division 1, 2, 3 and 4 of the league being put into championship. And then, if you perform well within your division, you're getting a chance to go up against the big guns. And there definitely seems to be a big appetite there amongst players. We all know there's usually not too much uniformity between the opinions and wants of players and those of, the board members that are actually going to make those decisions. So it's going to be really interesting to see over the next couple of weeks, county reps lobbying their county board, and whether many county, I saw there was a straw poll in the Examiner today of what the Ulster counties are going to do. There'll be a lot of big meetings and big decisions to be made over the next couple of weeks. But to me, Plan B definitely looks like it caters for all. I think the big thing is, the question will be from provincial councils in particular, are we going to lose our slice of the pie here? The provincials will be played at an earlier stage, almost as a precursor to the championship. So I still think there'll be, plenty of finances coming into the coffers of the provinces, but they will definitely, it would seem anyway, be reluctant to get go of the grip that they have on the provinces at the moment.
Isn't that the problem? Too much politics. Alison and Shane, you're both from Laois. You're every single year Dublin are winning Leinster in a cakewalk, and we know the result of Leinster for 2022 already. So Alison, as a GA fan, because I know your dad Bobby was heavily involved in the game, what's your preference?
Like, it's hard when you look at the two different proposals. I think B looks good. Like, I'd be in favour of that. Like, there's a lot of problems with A, like asking counties to move provinces. Kind of like what we love about the GA is the history of it. It can also hold us back, but I think there's problems there if you try to move different counties into different provinces. It devalues like the provincial, which you could argue is already devalued, but I don't think it would do anything to take away the one-sided nature of the games anyway, if it was putting other counties, switching them around, which just means you'd have more meaningless games, people getting hammering. B looks good to me. I just think the provincial championship has been devalued, but at the same time, I don't know, I think the powers that be need to do something to keep it important. It would be more of a kind of by the look of it, a pre-season tournament doesn't have any impact. But the kind of question I would want to, if it's going in kind of Division 1, 2, 3 and 4, what about the teams that finish like 6, 7 to 8 in Division 1? Are they potentially still better capability-wise than some of the teams that might qualify into the rounds that are in the lower divisions? And then you kind of question whether you're getting the best teams out of that format. So that's, to me, kind of what we're looking at. You look at the Leinster Championship I remember going to the Leinster Championship, the one Meath in Dublin a few years ago, and I missed the first 10 minutes of the game, which meant that I missed the most competitive 10 minutes of the game, So, like what Michael said there about the three different proposals is problematic, and I think often the people that you want to get the views of are the players, and they often don't have probably enough say on what they want to do, because their views are going to be very different to the people that decide in the end.
We want a better product, Shane, Keegan, and this is an opportunity, this option B, to get a better product, in my view.
100%, Jerry. Yeah. To me, proposal B looked a no-brainer from the off, and I was delighted this week when I heard that the GPA were coming out and backing it. It just makes complete and utter sense. I suppose, like the point Alison touched on there is well made, and I suppose that is something that some people might have in the back of their heads going into this, going, well, hold on, how is this fair that teams in divisions below are going to end up in the latter stages compared to some Division 1 teams who finished 6th, 7th? The counter argument to that is, okay, they might qualify for the next round of it. They're not going to win it, JD. I'm telling you now, maybe I'll be proven wrong, but I can't see any team outside of Division 1 winning this. And I think the first step for any team who wants to win it is to get themselves into Division 1, because that's where you're going to get steeled for a proper championship, run at a championship. That's where you're going to be playing your tough games that are going to get you up to the level. So, yeah, it's a tougher path in some respects, but that's just a tougher path to the next round. If you're looking at going all the way, then getting yourself into Division 1 is 100% the place to be. The players... they have to be listened to, JD. Why? No, I was going to say why wouldn't they be? We all know why they wouldn't be, but it's madness that they wouldn't be. I mean, what other hidden agenda could the players have here other than trying to create a format that they believe is most fair and equitable for all involved? Like, they have no hidden agenda here. They're just trying to push the solution that they feel is best for the players, and like these decisions have to start getting made in their interests.
John, as well as regard the counties, I think the counties will benefit massively from Plan B, because you're going to have at least 4, or you're going to have at least 3 and potentially 4 home championship games. Imagine, the crowds that will be at those games. Imagine the buzz will be at those games. Imagine the promotion that those games will offer. League games are great, and I love the league. It's so competitive, but just the time of the year, there's bound to be less bodies there. There's just going to be so many packed provincial venues for those home and away league games if Plan B goes through. And I think it's hugely exciting for county boards, and I think it's hugely exciting way and time to promote the GA within those counties. So I think it's I think there's a massive opportunity if Plan B goes through. But as we kind of touched on there, the reality of what the players want and what the players will actually get, we've seen down through the years. How many times have we seen after various congresses that decisions that look like no-brainers and that a lot of people were speaking for don't get the percentages that they need? So it's good that the GPA have come out as early as they have. In previous congresses and special congresses, they've been maybe a bit late to the table. They're kind of early to the table, and I'd expect a lot of influential voices to be coming out over the next couple of weeks in favour of Plan B. And obviously there's going to be some in favour of Plan A and Plan C, and that's going to be interesting to hear all the different debates over the next couple of weeks.
It's clearly the way forward. I think 7 meaningful games in the summer. The league championship is actually the best structure, but it doesn't have any meaning. If you're giving it meaning, then it opens up a completely new world of opportunity for lesser counties to have lesser counties in terms of their maybe ability to challenge the top counties, and not lesser in any other way, but to have that ability to play in the summer, to play meaningful games, to have the support, to have home and away games, as you say, Michael. It's a no-brainer for me. It's better what we have right now, but it doesn't mean it's going to go through. We talk about player power there, Michael Verney. It's fascinating what Peter Keegan came out with this statement. I'm just going to read part of it. He's not going to be the new Kerry manager. Jack O'Connor is going to be the new Kerry manager. Peter Keegan served 3 years. This is the statement that was released yesterday. Unfortunately, losing the semi-final by a point in extra time to the eventual All-Ireland winners led to a decision to end the work we started and the momentum we built. I know the players very much wanted us to continue with our project. They were the reason I wanted to stay. We're a united Kerry team with a great sense of purpose and ambition. All the players communicated to the County Board subcommittee their strong preference for the present management to be retained. It's most disappointing their wishes do not appear to be considered in the decision-making process. The players are a credit to their families, partners, clubs and communities. I wish them every success and in the future as they start out again. So Jack O'Connor will be ratified on Monday. I feel a bit sorry for Peter Keegan because I've never seen his name mentioned in any Kerry GA communique over the last month after 3 years of working as an amateur to do his best to win the All-Ireland. But there's only one currency that matters in Kerry, Michael, and that's the All-Ireland title.
Yeah, it's fascinating, John, the ability within the GA at board level in particular to shoot themselves in the foot. Like, it was obvious, and I think I was on a couple of weeks ago, I'm not sure if it was the pay-per-view or a Saturday show, saying like it was obvious from the outset that when essentially the job went for tender that Peter Keegan was not going to be the manager for 2022. I think that much was obvious. His name wasn't even mentioned in that statement that they released a couple of weeks ago, basically saying that they were going through a process to find a manager for 2022. Surely to God, behind the scenes, if they at board level knew that they wanted to go in a different direction, that a conversation is had with Peter Keegan and they, outline their plans and outline what they want, and he quietly steps aside and they thank him for his contributions over the last 3 years at senior level and previous to that at minor level and at development squad level. Whereas now, and I kind of feel sorry for Peter as well, he felt the need to come out with a statement, and he was right to come out with a statement because Kerry GA haven't come out with a statement thanking him for his time. And now it's a really interesting scenario when the next, Kerry player is put up for interview. So they're going to be asked, were you backing Peter for another year? And they're caught in a really awkward position because they're going to have to say, well, I would assume they're going to say, yes, we were backing Peter for another year. But then they also have to bat for Jack O'Connor, who's going to be the next manager in 2022. So, and Peter maybe in a parting shot has kind of drop that kind of a bombshell that's for somebody else to deal with over the next couple of months. But it is going to be interesting to see over the next while that first kind of Kerry player interview, what they say. But it just, the managers in particular, and I get really annoyed when players are cast aside maybe because of age as well, and there's no, thanking from county board level, there's no thanking from chairman or anything like that, and they're just kind of cast aside. And it's the same with managers. You forget, the dedication and time they've given to this role. Like Peter Keegan is, running a super value down in his local village there in Kerry. He's a businessman. Like the last thing in many ways he needs is to be managing a senior inter-county team. He's doing that off his own bat. The least he needs or deserves when he steps aside is, a pat in the back and a thanks for all your time. And then he just walks away quietly. Whereas I think Kerry GA have shot themselves in the foot in this regard. Yeah. And he was right not to walk away quietly, and he was right to say it as he sees it.
Alison, you grew up in this environment where there's a lot of managerial jobs and chopping and change, and it's who'd be a manager?
Yeah, I would anyway. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Like the players aren't being listened to here again. I think if Kerry got over the line against Tyrone, this even be a conversation? Like they were so unlucky in that semi-final, but I don't know. I'm not sure about this really, but there's a rumour that Paddy Talley, the defence coach from Tyrone, will be coming in with Jack O'Connor, and I think part of Kerry's problem obviously is their defence. So I don't know if that was kind of for that 5-man committee that wanted O'Connor. Is that something that they looked at to try and improve Kerry's defence, because it seems to be something that has let them down time and time again. I do feel sorry for Keane though. He brought some of the most exciting footballers, into the fore, and for Jack O'Connor now to return for his 3rd stint, that's highly unusual as a manager. And it's been 10 years since he's been with Kerry. The game has changed astronomically since he's been in charge of Kerry. Obviously, he did good work with Kildare. I don't know how well that would have went down there. And I know he put his interest out in a podcast, and I think they were expecting him to, I think it was seen that he was going to do the 3rd year running. But yeah, look, it's hard for any manager. There's huge pressure. You've got full-time jobs. You're never going to keep anyone happy. You're dealing with county boards. You're dealing with committees. You're dealing with all those pressures. But yeah, you would feel sorry for Keane and the fact that he had to come out and make that statement. But what Michael said now, what is the next Kerry player in an interview going to say? Like, they have to be obviously so
they got to move
careful.
on. They got to move on because the job now is to do it for Jack. That's the way.
But at the same time, if you're not being listened to and you were really happy with the setup, and then you do have to move on. You get on with it. If you're not going to get on with it, you're not going to be there. But at the same time, you were happy with the way things were going, and then you feel like you're not being listened to. So do you feel a bit devalued?
I'm just looking here that Everton have scored in the Premier League. Well, we'll see what the players say. We haven't heard from them yet, but we'll see what they say when they are definitely put up for interview. But as Man United won, Everton won here in the Premier League, and I think it's Andros Townsend who's got the goal for the 2nd week in a row. Scored against Norwich last week, and the Toffees have equalised at Old Trafford once again. Not 100% smooth at Old Trafford at the moment for Man United. This was on a counter-attack, this goal. Just briefly, Shane Keegan, Kildare have actually rectified their vacancy by appointing Glenn Ryan last night, and a dream team of Dermot Earley and Anthony Rainbow and Johnny Doyle in there. But look, things move on quickly. It's keep on going back to it. Like it's unfortunate for all concerned. There'll be a lot of hurt there in Kerry. Maurice Fitzgerald, for example, a legend, was in the backroom team there. But the only thing that matters in Kerry is winning the All-Ireland.
It is, Judy, and I would have less of an issue with Kerry deciding that they needed to move on from Peter Keane. I'd have far more of an issue with nobody in Kerry seeming to be willing to stand in front of Peter Keane and tell him that was the case. This convoluted way of allowing him to reapply rather than just fronting up and saying, look, sorry Peter, we're moving on, we don't see it as an option. It's just a coward's way out of it, really, in my opinion, I suppose. And look, it showed how much he really wanted to stay going, that he was willing to swallow his pride and reapply, when in his heart of hearts he must have known there was little to no chance of him actually getting, if this was the process they were going to say. The only thing I would throw out as well, Jerry,
very briefly.
Sure Peter Keane firmly believes that the players were behind him, but players will tell a manager to his face, we're behind you, and then maybe saying something else at county board level. So there's no guarantees that the players were necessarily 100% behind him.
Well, we don't know if every player was or if every player wasn't, and there's a lot of different opinions within squads, and squads are big, so we don't know, and we may never know is what will happen. But after 2 o'clock, we're going to speak about women's rugby with Alison. We're going to speak about Frankie Dettori's brilliant week here at Bellewstown, the Ryder Cup. Did Europe not have an edge at all in this kind of thing? Was it just too nice, as they were saying on the Golf Weekly podcast? And also speak about Manny Pacquiao's retirement on Off the Ball here. It's now Man United 1, Everton 1. That goal confirmed. Andros Townsend has equalised for the Toffees at Old Trafford. We're back after the news. This is Off the Ball Saturday on News Talk. John Duggan with you through until 5. You can text us 53106 or tweet us at Off the Ball. Manchester United 1, Everton 1 in the Premier League. There is 74 minutes on the watch. Ronaldo was on. United took the lead through Anthony Martial, but Andros Townsend on the break has equalised for the Toffees. United just not completely fluid and smooth at the moment early in the new season. Coventry 4, Fulham 1 in the Championship, and some good Irish displays in this Alfred Dunhill Links. At the moment, Daniel Gavins of England leads on 14 under par through 11 holes of his third round. He's a shot in front of Danny Willett. But Shane Lowry is now in a tie for third, 5 under through 8 at St Andrews to 11 under par. And John Murphy, who only recently turned pro from Kinsale in County Cork, 10 under par. John Murphy having a great tournament and a great week this week. We're joined by Alison Miller, the former Irish Rugby International, Michael Verney, the Irish Independent Sports Writer, and the UEFA Pro Licence coach Shane Keegan. On the Saturday panel this week, we're reviewing the week, talking about all the sporting issues. You can watch us on the digital and social channels for Periscope on Twitter, @OffTheBall, YouTube, Facebook, and on the OTB Sports app, as well as listening on News Talk on your radio. And you can text us with any question or opinion to 53106. Alison, last week, I was thinking back to your career in the Grand Slam in 2013 and your try against New Zealand in 2014 at the World Cup and a semi-final appearance, and I'm looking then at those devastated figures on the pitch after the Scotland defeat and the Spain defeat that has failed to qualify the Irish women's rugby team for a World Cup. I suppose all I can ask is, what the hell happened? What the hell happened?
Good question. We could answer that. I suppose there's been a decline in the performance of the women's 15s team, probably from around 2016 onwards. This is definitely not about money or resources. A lot of people have come out and said, you need to give them more money. I think this is the best supported Irish women's team in terms of training camps, in terms of support. So, unfortunately, the girls did not perform on the, I won't say weekend, it was over the course of a week or two, whatever it was. They just didn't perform, and why they didn't perform is the reason we're all trying to figure out. There was obviously, they would have went into this tournament as the favourites. Ireland, this Irish team would not have been used to being favourites in any competition. They wouldn't go into the Six Nations being favourites. But when you look at the performance, there was funny decisions when you're in an important game like Scotland, a chance to kick a penalty and, tap and go. Selection issues, Claire Malloy not starting any of the games when you have a world-class player like herself. Just, there was, I suppose, coaching issues. The line-out malfunctioned from the start, the first game against Spain all the way through to the last game against Scotland. I think players looked off their game. They looked like they were lacking confidence. They have had very little game time prior to this tournament. Their last game as a collective Irish team would have been the Six Nations. So all those factors would have definitely contributed to the players not looking the way they should have. They definitely should have qualified. I mean, people have talked about money and resources. Scotland do not have a bigger player pool than us, and Spain certainly don't. So probably a big thing is the way the game is run here. From about 2015-16 on, the RFU decided to take sevens as being the priority, and I was a full-time sevens player myself. I love sevens. I have no problem with sevens, but I think we're in 15s country, and I think 15s now needs to be made priority. Anthony Eddy is the women's director and the director of sevens rugby. That is a huge remit for one person, and he's coaching sevens as well. So I think possibly there needs to be a separate women's rugby director, and then maybe leave Anthony work on the sevens. He's done a great job on forming the men and women's professional programs and brought the men to the Olympics. So a lot of issues, but this first and foremost very disappointing for the players. They've no doubt worked hard, but I think they have themselves to blame for the performances, but they also don't shoulder all the blame for the way they're set up to succeed.
It's an amateur game as well, Alison, and the AIL is important then in that regard to have a grassroots structure for the development strategically of the game here, and interpros might not be the answer, but the AIL seems to be important here in linking with the national team.
Yeah, I think the thinking at the top is that the girls are better off in training camps every weekend rather than being released to play games, which to me is, you could see there was situations on the pitch where people didn't have game sense, game appreciation or tactical understanding, but they haven't been in those scenarios that often, or they haven't been in them regularly enough. Like a lot of people complain about the AIL, well, it's not of a good standard. Well, it would be of a good standard if all the players were released to play and the union worked on developing it, and that it was the main way of developing our 15s players. our back line at the weekend was formed of every player had been a cap sevens player except for the scrum half. So if you're a 15s player out there, you're probably wondering, how do you get into that team, or even the back row? How do you get into that team as being a full-time, if you're not a full-time sevens player? Because to be a full-time sevens player, you need to be not to work, essentially. So the AIL certainly needs to be improved. And I think the players, obviously we had a problem leading into this, which we didn't have a league because of COVID. But I think certainly the players, the Irish players, I think would be no harm if the Inch Pros was brought forward a few weeks, not even that much too far, and let those Irish players play, because they certainly looked undercooked in their performances.
What were you getting right then 7, 8, 9 years ago?
I think, to be honest, like when you look back at the work that, say, Philip Doyle did, when I think back about training camps, they were brutal, but they were, standards were so important. I mean, everything was picked up on. You weren't, no player would dare be late. Obviously, no player should ever be late. Standards, if you were giving away penalties in training, there would be repercussions. He didn't get paid anyway, but he did a lot of skill sessions up and down the country. He had a small cohort of players, which probably, we talk about that we don't have a huge playing pool, but he had a small cohort of players that were very loyal to each other, and that's, playing for Ireland was the most important thing for all those players. So he managed to gel a group together in those years and work on improving that set of players each year. So that started way before my time even. I came in around 2009, but him and other coaches have been working on developing players. I think what we saw in Adam Griggs' reign is we're going through a huge amount of players all the time, different combinations all the time. So instead of trying to improve the group you have, and then certainly bring in people if they're performing, we just seem to be so many different players coming in all the time. And it was always spoken about the team is in transition. I think there's a certain time you have to stop saying that, because I think if you keep saying the team's in transition, that's an excuse. It's nearly an excuse to say, well, we're in transition. I think in our day, we just said we weren't good enough. I think, that was the difference. We just weren't good enough. Well, how do we get better? It wasn't, well, we're transitioning, because what we heard about this team, well, they're in transition. When does a team stop becoming in transition? Surely when you're in a World Cup qualifier, you're not in transition. So he just worked on the small pool of players he had. He worked incredibly hard. He had very intelligent players, which is Lynn Cantwell, Joy Neville, Fiona Coughlin. Fiona Coughlin was a brilliant captain. I think that really, really helped. But we no doubt that the whole thing was about standards, and you didn't get away with anything. You didn't get away with an inch. You didn't miss camps. You didn't miss training. It's just simple, old school, but it seemed to work.
I'm not the biggest fan, Michael Verney, of the 24/7 news cycle and instant headlines and instant sackings and outrage culture and cancel culture and all that kind of thing. But I suppose 10 years ago, if we'd failed to qualify for the World Cup, it wouldn't have been under as much of a spotlight as this is now. And that's a good thing, Michael.
No, I think so, yeah, because everyone has to be held accountable. If it was to encourage people to read 2 pieces today on the women's rugby kind of saga at the moment, it'd probably be Rory O'Connor's piece and in the Independent, and Niamh Briggs did a very good piece in the back of the Independent as well. Just one line from Rory there that you said, a week on, the RFU has begun the process of figuring out why Ireland, ever present at the tournament since 1994, semi-finalists in 2014 and host the last time the World Cup was held in 2017, finished third in a competition featuring Nations Day, beat regularly. So I think that's very stark when you say that. And over the next 18 months, Irish women's rugby should be building up towards a World Cup. The anticipation around that, the media profile of the players, the effects that has on the next generation, young aspiring girls watching their heroes playing and getting all the exposure that goes with that. Whereas now it's just going to be blank really over the next kind of 18 months. And aspiring young women rugby players don't have anything to look at, which I think is obviously that's going to be one of the byproducts of their failure to qualify. And just a couple of lines from Niamh Briggs that I thought was interesting. She just said she's comparing basically how a men's international, how he gets his first couple of caps compared to how a woman would get her first couple of caps. So she just said, a first men's international cap is usually earned on the back of years in school and provincial academies that have primed them for the professional game. They build through the levels, and if they're good enough, after getting a taste of URC and Champions Cup rugby, playing close to 20 games a season, they might get an opportunity with Ireland. Our women's internationals get to play 3 inter-pro games every year. The next level down is the women's AIL, and if you're not already involved with the international setups or have been flagged as an outstanding underage talent, how do you get noticed if the games are passing the selectors by? So she talked about how her international rugby career was finished, but that she thought she still had something to offer, but that there was nobody looking at her. I think it was in the 2018-2019 campaign with UL Bohemians, but there was no one looking at her or seeing whether she was still up to that level. And I just thought that was interesting. And she just talks about the review as well, that the review needs to be more than just looking at this qualifying campaign. She said, now is not the time to be throwing around the pie-in-the-sky notions of professionalism. We can't even start to consider such a leap until we address the foundations. From there we can build.
Can I just jump in on two
Alison,
things that Michael said? Because one thing that wasn't done, the team of 2013-14, those people's faces were never used by the RFU to generate interest. So the likes of Lynn Cantwell,
who's in South Africa at the moment now, by the way.
Sorry?
She's in South Africa now.
Yeah, she's like, there you go. Like, they headhunted her to run their women's program. So they were never used. Their success was never used to try and get more girls in the game. They retired, and those groups of players were never used for young players to look up to. And I think also what Michael said, that Niamh had said she was playing in 2018 and no one was looking at you. And I know this from, I had the long route into rugby. I started off in Portlaoise, and we were the lowest division club in the country. And I was playing regularly, but there was never anyone looking. I went to Leinster trials, didn't get picked because I was probably, in a really low division club. I played for Connacht and got seen through the Interpro. So I know there's more girls like me in these lower division clubs, especially in the country where you get really talented GA or soccer girls just taking up rugby for the fun. They do not realise how good they are sometimes. And I'd have to say to them, you're really good. And, the RFU will say, we don't have huge player numbers. But yet I never, ever see anyone going around to these games looking for talent, which would be a simple thing to do, to ask someone to go down of any given weekend just to have a look at some players. And that's, to me, I've said it so many times because that's where I came from, and I know there's more out there. I'm not the only one that came that route, or that could come that route. So unfortunately, they've dropped the ball on that. And I think when Anthony Eddy and Nusafora came from Australia to Ireland, I think they really hoped the sevens would take off, and I know the men qualified, but unfortunately, I think they've probably got the focus wrong. I think in this country, 15s is what people are interested in. That's why young girls go to rugby clubs. They have put all their eggs into the sevens basket, and unfortunately, even I played and we tried to qualify for Rio, and it was really disappointing, but we haven't had huge success in the sevens either. So it's disappointing to see that the 15s has been neglected for the sevens, and the sevens hasn't succeeded as well. It hasn't captured the public interest the way the guys thought it would. And I remember, you laugh at this, I remember explaining to David Nusafora how the guys in my area, I'm from, shout out to Arlis Killeen, they'd rather win a county final than an Olympic medal. And they could not understand that rationale. And I just thought that was kind of, you have to kind of understand the Irish way as well, what you're coming into and what the Irish people are interested in. But sevens, it just, unfortunately, we haven't had the success. You really want to win an Olympic medal. And what's happening now, I think they're using the sevens games to feed into the 15s game. And then you see a lot of young players that have played all sevens through their 18, 19, 20. They haven't played 15 since they were young. And then they're put straight into the 15s game with little or no real game experience at that level. And you can see that on the pitch. They're really good players and they could really be very good. But I think there needs to be two separate programs, have a separate sevens program, have a separate 15s program. And if the sevens girls want to play 15s on the national team, I think we need all our players playing AIL and all our players playing Interpro. So we can see who are the best players when they're playing against each other. When these players aren't playing against each other, when there's one in a professional camp and the others are playing AIL and they're never playing against each other, how do you know who's the best players? You simply don't.
Okay. Thanks for that insight, Alison. Just before we finish up here in the panel, just going to move on to a few of the other stories of the week. Shane Keegan, you're a big Manny Pacquiao fan. I was just looking through his record as he retired this week. 62 wins and 72 bouts, 12 world titles across 8 weight divisions. He's going to run for president of the Philippines. I didn't see much of this lad now, I have to say, over the last 2 decades. But if you were going to give the Shane Keegan experience to the uninitiated of Manny Pacquiao's brilliance, what was brilliant about him?
Yeah, you missed out there, JD, I'll tell you, because like the wonderful thing about Pacquiao, JD, was just the fact that he was willing to take on everybody and anybody. I mean, you look over kind of his golden period, I suppose, which is probably the noughties, maybe slightly into the early part of the next decade, and like anybody who was out there, and it was I suppose it was a golden time really in that weight division as well. But I mean, he fought Morales 3 times, Barrera twice, Marquez 3 times, Cotto, De La Hoya. And look, I suppose the one regret is that by the time he eventually got to Floyd Mayweather, he probably Mayweather had managed to duck and dive fighting him long enough that he was probably a little bit past his peak. I would have absolutely loved to have seen him against Mayweather at his peak and knocked the head off him, all going well. And it's just such a pity that didn't come around. But look, he was fighter of the decade during that period. I think the one that really sums it up in terms of what I'm saying in terms of take on every, he defeated 22 different world champions throughout his career. I mean, there was no hiding place for this man. He took them on, and he obviously enough when you're fighting of that standard, he took his few defeats. He didn't, he wasn't overly concerned about trying to have a flawless record. It wasn't about ducking and diving fights that might be a little bit, cute in that sense. It was just, let's take them all on. And if I come out on top, which he did the vast majority of the time because he was just such an outstanding boxer, happy days. But if he didn't and he lost, no problem. Do you want a rematch? Let's go again, as was the case with Morales and a few more. So, look, he was to my mind, the last 20, 30 years, maybe it's down to perception and the fact that I just dislike Mayweather's personality so much. But for me, it's Pacquiao all the way as the best that's been around over that period.
Well, I'm looking at the BBC News here today, and I don't know if I get the name right from the Philippine president, Rodrigo Duterte. I think if that's the way you pronounce his name. He's not going to run for president next year. He's going to retire from politics. Manny Pacquiao is running for president of the Philippines. Maybe he'll win. I came from an impoverished background. If we like to see an Irish sports person run in the country and do a better job than the politicians in Leinster House, Michael Verney, who would you like to see run the country? Roy Keane? Or somebody from Offaly GAA?
Yeah, Roy Keane would be interesting, all right. The two, I was thinking of a joint presidency, Gary and Paul O'Donovan. Loved by all. We're guaranteed to be a bit cracked. We get loads of good sound bites. They're men of the people. They were the two that initially kind of sprung to mind. The others Keane would be an interesting one. Someone like Paul O'Connell as a leader as well. But I'd go for the two O'Donovans because I think they would be, I think they'd be symbolic of what we are as a nation. As you said, we obviously like a bit of crack, and we'll try hard and we'll put our hand to anything.
Alison Miller, who would you like to see run the country from a sporting background?
Oh, I'm a bit biased now, I have to say Lynn Cantwell, former Irish rugby great. She's obviously been headhunted by South Africa High Performance. She is unbelievable person. She would make sure to change everything that's wrong. And obviously, I looked up what the role of the president was, so I'm not going to say what she can change because apparently there aren't the roles.
More Prime Minister, Taoiseach.
But she definitely improved things for the better, and I won't say I won't have.
Shane Keegan, who would you want to see Prime Minister or Taoiseach?
I'd go with one athlete and one coach. And athlete-wise, even though he had a bad week last week, I'd go with Pádraig Harrington. I love the man. He talks common sense all the time. He leaves no stone unturned in trying to find every edge he possibly can. They're the qualities I'd like to see in somebody like that. A guy I actually think could do it, coming from a coaching background, is Gary Keegan. Everything the man touches turns to gold. Incredibly analytical fella, and I actually think he'd be really suited to a role like that.
Speaking of the Ryder Cup there, the more I've thought about this, folks, in the last week, I've kind of felt that Europe lacked an edge last week, and there was so much emotion and there's so much enjoyment. Look, they're not getting paid for it. It is one of the weeks where it's a team sport. But I felt that they could have been a bit more invested in the edge of winning this Ryder Cup. It was a record defeat, 19-9. I don't think... Look, I think on paper, and I think the Americans didn't get in their own way, did much better world ranking. The course is set up to suit them, Michael. But I felt that there was a lot of, we had an amazing week, but you got beaten by 10 points.
Yeah, imagine a GA team coming out after a 20-point beating and saying, but we were training brilliant, and there's great crack amongst the group or something like that. I don't think it would wash. I suppose maybe looking back and just listening to the comments earlier from the golf show, you maybe just would have expected maybe a few more chips on shoulders, and maybe while they're talking about how great the group is and how invested they all are in it, that we want to win and we will do anything to win. And I think, like, to be fair, the few people that you could see that in, that you could really see it outwardly in, would have been someone like Shane Lowry, who showed how much it meant to him regardless of how far they were behind that Saturday night.
I'd never seen anything like that. It was like the Hulk.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant, and that's the team. You're not going to see that as an individual, because I don't know, maybe golf is such an individual sport. People would almost see that as if he did that in the Alfred Dunhill Links or whatever it is this weekend, people would think he's been above his station. But when you're part of a team, he's trying to inspire others. He's not just inspiring himself. But definitely, I'd say people would have liked to see maybe a bit more of a chip on guys' shoulders. But in fairness, they're definitely going to have that for 2 years' time now, because there's a record defeat, a record points tally for the US, and it definitely looks like the power is in their corner anyway. Just with regards to their average ranking, I think was 9 across their team, whereas Europe's was something like 30. So it would definitely suggest that the US are going to have a strong arm over the next couple of years. But now it's great. What do sports people like nothing more than having? It's like they have a point to prove now, and hopefully they'll come in with a chip on their shoulder on home side in 2 years' time.
Yeah, it was so easy after 9 wins in 12. And look, you look at a result in very different ways. When Europe were winning Ryder Cups, it was all about the camaraderie, and it was all about the fact that they were such a great team, and the Americans were dysfunctional. So look, it's disappointing for Padraig Harrington. We were just going through Meade's All-Star nominations, 14 of them. Won the intermediate, then won the senior. That is just fantastic for the TG4 ladies All-Ireland All-Stars. And we were thinking, I suppose, in the chat before the show, they've gone from intermediate to win senior. One of the great stories of the year. The best underdog stories in Irish sport. Alison, anything comes to your mind for me? For me, I'll be thinking like Munster and the All Blacks. Freewheeling Dillon won the Irish Grand National this year at 150-1. And even I would think that Michael Carruth and Ronnie Delaney, when they won Olympic gold, weren't expected to do so. Is there anything coming to mind for you? I can't really think of anything from Laois.
You're not here in 2003, John. You're not around in 2003.
Which that's Mick O'Dwyer. You expected to win Leinster's Mick O'Dwyer.
Laois. When Claire Beck-Carey in the 92 Munster final, they hadn't won a title since World War I, and they haven't won one since. So that stuck out to me. Shane Lowry winning the Irish Open as an amateur, and obviously I'll have to pick our team when we bet New Zealand in the 2014 World Cup to get to a semi-final. So there are my three. There's other examples of underdogs, but I even think, even though Kayla Taylor wasn't an underdog going into the Olympics, I think her whole story was a bit of an underdog, getting the Olympics, or getting women's boxing into the Olympics, and going for it from an early age, that she was destined to be an Olympic champion when there was no guarantees the sport would even be in the Olympics. And the fact that she was so world class and was the reason it got into the Olympics is kind of an underdog story in a way. Like, she was obviously clear favourite, but the underdog to make it happen.
Good choices, Alison. Just to let you know, folks, Man United won Everton, won as a full-time from Old Trafford. Anthony Martial and Andros Townsend with the goals. What are your choices, Shane? The best ever underdog moments in Irish sport? Yeah,
look, I think Alison's team's win over New Zealand has to be right up there. She's gone and nicked two of mine. I think the Shane Lowry one, again, I suppose it depends on what you're into and who you like to get behind. I think was a big one as well. Like, if you're going really recent, I mean, I'm not sure, Jeddy, maybe you, like, at the start of this year's championship, what price were Tyrone to win in All-Ireland? Like, you know, they really did come from very, very far back in the field. I suppose the only thing that takes from it is, when we think of an underdog story, we think of them having to be, you know, a huge underdog in the final. Whereas I suppose they probably weren't a massive underdog in the final. But if you look at this year as a whole, how many people would have given them a hope in hell of winning it at the start of the year? And the same would have applied to McGuinness's Donegal team when he took over initially. It seems straightforward now is how he achieved it. But back then, they would have been massive outsiders to pull off what they pulled off, you know.
Michael?
A couple of GA ones. The Miracle of Mullinachta, when they went on to win Leinster, beating Kilmacud, like the half parish beating... God, I don't know how many parishes Kilmacud is or how many teams they have, but they did an awful lot. Nicky Graham was obviously central to that. And then he was the man at the helm when Cavan won Ulster last year. And just even that kind of miracle day when Cavan and Tip both won provincial crowns, that was just unbelievable, especially everything around the anniversary of Bloody Sunday and Tip wearing the commemorative jerseys. And then just a snooker one, Dennis Taylor beating Steve Davis in 85. Davis was the king of snooker in the mid-80s. He was 7-0 up in the final. And then sometime well after 12 o'clock, Taylor produced this unbelievable win and a black ball finish. They'd probably be some of mine. Clare 95 would be another one. And I know we talked about Laois winning in 2003, but Westmeath winning in 04 under Paddy as well. That, like, they'd never won one, and they haven't won one since. So they'd definitely be big underdog stories.
Marooned, that was a documentary, wasn't it, on 2004. Brilliant. And Steve Davis, I was Steve Davis obsessive as a 6-year-old, and I went to bed and I woke up the next morning and parents told me that he'd lost. I was absolutely gutted to Dennis Taylor, but then you realise then later on that he's an Irishman that won the world title. Just on Frankie Dettori, you were down in Bellewstown, Michael, during the week. I love this story because... never meet your heroes is what they say, but Frankie Dettori was a real hero. He came over to Ireland, he rode in the race in honour of Barney Curley, he rode for Direct Aid for Africa, he won the race on Truba for Johnny Murtagh. Then he's in the phone box with the Trill Beyond, the Yellow Sam phone box of that betting coup in 1975, taking selfies. What a hero, and what a connection with the people. That was fantastic.
Oh, it was unbelievable, John. It was great to be there. I just went for the main event. I'd be a massive Barney Curley fan. I would have followed his gambles and all his various schemes throughout his career, and we would have been involved in some of the gambles even when we were in college. And he was amazing, a fascinating man, and he set up obviously Direct Aid for Africa in 1996, and Frankie's been out there to Zambia, and Jamie Spencer's been there, and Johnny Murtagh, Tom Queally, Shane Kelly, all these guys. It was great to see them coming over on Thursday. But Frankie was just an absolute star. He must have taken 5,000 or 6,000 selfies. He signed a couple of things for me. I was there with things to be signed. He signed programs and everything for everyone else. He's over, I think he's 50. He was just flying around with a baseball cap on backwards, taking pictures with everyone. The absolute life and soul of the party. And just even on Bellewstown the other day, it was the first time post-pandemic I've seen 4,000 to 5,000 people just mingling. Everybody just there, really enjoying themselves. Get people standing around the phone box getting pictures. Loads of people from up around Fermanagh and various counties close to where Barney was born, just remembering him. And it was a great day and the most fitting winner. I 20 euro on the runner-up, Mishar.
You didn't back Frankie's horse. What were you doing?
No, I didn't. I've been following Mishar for a while. I didn't think the fairy tale.
Too clever by good, Michael.
But I was glad. I was glad to see Frankie winning, and even just the flying dismount in Bellewstown. 46 years after the Yellow Sam coup was landed. It was a perfect day with a fairy tale ending, and Frankie is just an unbelievable racing ambassador. And to say that he was that even I was there when he was in Bellewstown for that winner on. Remembering his good friend Barney, I'm just delighted to say that, and it was just a real special sporting moment. And all of a sudden, you're going to see him tomorrow, and he's going to be riding in the Prix de l'Arc de Triomphe 3 days after being in Bellewstown. So that's kind of what sport can do.
That encapsulates the week, I think, in a nutshell. Michael Verney, thanks so much. Michael, Alison Miller, Shane Keegan, you're such great sports to share your time with us on Off the Ball on Saturday on the Saturday panel. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we'll chat soon.
Thanks, Josh.
Bye, guys.
See you, folks.
Okay, just to let you know, the Premier League has ended. Manchester United won, Everton won, with Anthony Martial scoring in the first half for United, but Andros Townsend equalising in the second half for the Toffees. So not 100% fluid for United at the moment. We're going to have Mark Lawrence and Johnny Ward and Dan McDonald to talk about it between 3 and 5. And we're going to hear from the Irish rugby legend Brian O'Driscoll after this break.
Off the Ball on News Talk.